They threw everything they had into the offensive. 2 full brigades, over 100 armored vehicles, including tanks and reconnaissance units. But what unfolded wasn't a triumph. It was a catastrophe played out across trenches, minefields, and beneath the ever-watchful eyes of drones. This wasn't merely a failed attack. It was a glimpse into the evolving nature of warfare. Let's break down the reality with Red Zone secrets. Russia launched a large-scale ground offensive, deploying 2 full brigades supported by more than 100 armored assets, including tanks and armored personnel carriers. The assault began with a mechanized recon force spearheading the advance, but the operation unraveled almost immediately. One of the lead tanks struck a concealed mine, and an APC was taken out by precise Ukrainian artillery fire before it could even reach the front. The explosion shattered the formation, creating confusion and panic among advancing units. Russian infantry tried to dig in by storming Ukrainian trench positions, but they were quickly pinned by return fire and failed to secure any ground. The terrain was unforgiving. Dense forest lines, entrenched positions, and heavily mined fields severely restricted movement and left vehicles exposed to relentless fire. In a matter of minutes, what was supposed to be a decisive push turned into a fragmented and paralyzed offensive. Ukraine didn't have to do much at that point. Russian momentum had already collapsed. Their attack lines broke apart before the bulk of the force could even engage, leaving a wide opening for Ukraine's counterstrike. And Ukraine wasted no time seizing the opportunity. With surgical timing, Ukrainian forces launched a swift and calculated counteroffensive. Bradley infantry fighting vehicles transported troops directly to the front, laying down suppressive fire to cover their advance. These armored units were critical in moving infantry safely through a battlefield littered with craters, obstacles, and deadly mines. At the same time, Ukrainian artillery began raining down cluster munitions on concentrations of Russian armor behind the shattered front. These rounds, dispersing dozens of explosive submunitions, inflicted heavy damage on grouped vehicles and stalled any attempt at reinforcement. The effect was brutal and immediate, especially for Russian elements trying to regroup under fire. Meanwhile, Ukrainian drones surveilling the battlefield spotted another column of Russian armor moving up from the rear. Drone teams swiftly relayed coordinates to nearby artillery batteries, which opened fire before the Russian units could get into position. This seamless link between aerial reconnaissance and long-range fire made forward movement nearly impossible for Russian forces. Every element of Ukraine's defense worked in harmony. Bradley surged ahead, artillery delivered punishing blows, and drones provided real-time battlefield intelligence. The result was another wave of destruction before Russian forces could regain their footing. This stage of the conflict made it clear: technology and timing could reshape the entire battlefield dynamic. Ukraine wasn't just reacting anymore. It was dictating the terms of engagement. After suffering severe losses at the front, Russian units tried to redirect their offensive. To avoid concentrated artillery strikes, they rerouted their remaining troops and armor onto a nearby side road. But this new path offered no escape. Ukrainian engineers had already seeded the area with mines, and the lead vehicles triggered multiple explosions almost immediately. At the same time, Ukrainian anti-tank missile teams, positioned with pinpoint accuracy, targeted the immobilized armor trapped in the narrow corridor. Many of the strikes originated from concealed forest edge positions, where Russian troops had little visibility or time to respond. The situation worsened when it became clear their original reconnaissance unit had been wiped out, leaving no scouts to guide or warn the remaining force. In a desperate move, Russian commanders began sending APCs forward to intentionally trigger mines and clear a path. But these vehicles were rapidly destroyed, their loss compounding the growing disarray. This phase demonstrated that even when Russia tried to adapt its tactics, Ukraine had already accounted for it. Every move was anticipated, and every adjustment met with immediate resistance. As Ukraine held the line, it became evident that Russia's offensive wasn't just faltering in firepower. It was breaking down in coordination and leadership. With Russian momentum grinding to a halt, Ukraine doubled down on its technological edge. Compact FPV drones flew relentlessly above the front lines, scanning for stalled or hiding targets. Once locked on, they plunged into armored vehicles with pinpoint precision, often taking out a tank or personnel carrier in a single strike. Alongside these drone assaults, Ukrainian forces deployed anti-tank guided missiles, ATGMs, along choke points and wooded paths. These missile teams operated from expertly hidden positions with clear fields of fire. As Russian vehicles rolled into these kill zones, they were picked off one by one. Numerous APCs and logistics vehicles were eliminated before they could reach forward positions. Bradley infantry fighting vehicles once again played a central role. While Ukrainian ground troops maneuvered between trenches and tree cover, the Bradleys provided steady supporting fire from the rear. Equipped with 25mm cannons and advanced targeting systems, these vehicles suppressed Russian infantry, giving Ukrainian forces the breathing room to reposition or press forward. This blend of modern weaponry and tactical foresight allowed Ukraine to completely stall Russia's push. Rather than engaging in large-scale, chaotic battles, Ukraine relied on surgical strikes, each attack carefully planned and precisely executed. It was a clear demonstration that in today's warfare, smaller and smarter weapons, combined with superior coordination, can outmatch brute force. As drones circled above and missiles struck from the flanks, Russian forces gradually lost the ability to maneuver, fight back, or even respond effectively. It was at this point that Western tanks entered the fight. Ukraine, pushing back hard against Russian pressure, deployed Leopard 2 tanks, German-built powerhouses provided by NATO allies. These tanks didn't charge headlong into danger. Instead, they took up positions just behind the front, offering critical long-range fire support. With their powerful 120mm guns, they targeted Russian armor caught near tree lines and trench networks. Every round was deliberate, designed to neutralize threats without exposing the tanks to unnecessary risk. Their precision fire gave Ukrainian infantry much-needed cover, disrupting Russia's attempts to regroup and launch a second assault. Unlike lighter vehicles, the Leopards were built to endure. Their robust armor and advanced thermal imaging systems allowed them to operate around the clock, whether under sunlight or in total darkness. This made them ideal for holding defensive positions and neutralizing targets from a distance, ensuring Russia couldn't exploit speed or surprise. The Leopards weren't there to spearhead in advance. Their job was to anchor the defense and act as a technological force multiplier. As Bradleys and drones struck from above and the flanks, the Leopards reinforced Ukraine's core defensive line with heavy firepower and battlefield control. With every shell fired, these tanks sent a clear message. This was no longer a fight on Ukrainian soil alone. It now had the firepower and support of some of the world's most advanced military systems. Following the collapse of their first offensive, Russian forces regrouped and tried once more. Fresh troops and more armored vehicles were brought in for a second wave. On the surface, this new assault looked more formidable, but it followed the same routes and repeated the same errors. As the new column advanced, it was quickly met by landmines and long-range artillery strikes. Ukrainian drones, constantly watching the terrain, spotted the formation early and transmitted coordinates to concealed artillery units. The Ukrainian gunners didn't hesitate. They fired cluster munitions that detonated above the convoy, damaging tanks and armored vehicles before they could even deploy into combat formations. Smoke screens and sudden maneuvers couldn't mask Russian movements from Ukraine's persistent drone surveillance. The landscape hadn't changed. Trenches cut deep through the fields, forest belts created ambush zones, and open ground remained littered with deadly traps. Russian units had no clear passage forward. Their tanks stalled in disarray, some immobilized by mines, others destroyed while trying to navigate around obstacles. Even with more preparation, this second push lacked any surprise. Ukrainian forces were already in position, watching every move in real time. With each passing mile, Russia's progress slowed and became increasingly hazardous. By the time the second offensive crumbled, all that remained was a scattered, broken formation, trapped between minefields and falling artillery, unable to press forward. Amid the chaos of this second failed assault, a group of Ukrainian soldiers found themselves stranded in a frontline trench. Russian shelling and gunfire encircled their position, cutting off any hope of retreat. The situation became even more dire when one soldier was gravely wounded and urged his comrades to leave him behind so they might survive. But Ukrainian command wasn't about to abandon its soldiers. Under heavy fire, a Bradley fighting vehicle was dispatched to reach the trapped unit. With drones providing overwatch and suppressive fire keeping the enemy at bay, the Bradley navigated a deadly landscape of mines and wreckage. As Russian forces attempted to close the gap, the crew moved with urgency. The stranded troops climbed aboard, helping their wounded comrade in the process. The Bradley didn't pause. It powered through the gunfire and returned safely to Ukrainian lines, bringing everyone back alive. This mission wasn't just a tactical rescue. It symbolized the seamless coordination between infantry and armored support, even under extreme conditions. It also served as a stark message to Russian forces. Ukraine's defensive lines remained unshaken and unified. With their comrades rescued and morale restored, Ukrainian troops gained a vital psychological edge, making any further Russian advances even more difficult. By the time the fighting drew to a close, Russia had lost far more than machinery. It lost initiative and confidence. Despite committing 2 entire brigades and over 100 armored vehicles, including tanks and APCs, Russian forces failed to breach Ukrainian lines. Their reliance on outdated frontal tactics fell flat against a modern, dynamic defense. Ukraine's multi-layered system proved devastatingly effective. Minefields halted early advances, artillery pounded clustered formations, and drones relentlessly tracked exposed positions. Anti-tank teams and advanced Western equipment like the Bradleys and Leopard 2s added layers of defense Russia couldn't penetrate. Every time Russian troops tried to reorganize, Ukrainian UVs spotted them, and artillery struck before they could reposition. Even smoke screens and distraction maneuvers couldn't shield them from Ukraine's digital eyes in the sky. This battle highlighted the power of asymmetric warfare, where a smaller, well-coordinated force equipped with smart technology can defeat a larger adversary relying on outdated doctrine. Ukraine's edge wasn't just in weapons, but in timing, strategy, and synergy. By the end, the battlefield was littered with burned-out tanks, shattered APCs, and the wreckage of failed plans. A powerful reminder that raw force alone no longer wins wars. This confrontation was more than just a clash of hardware. It marked a turning point in the way wars are fought today. Russia brought sheer numbers. Ukraine brought precision. With drones, guided munitions, and tightly integrated units, Ukraine turned every Russian move into a costly mistake. From the first failed assault to the final withdrawal, the entire operation exposed the flaws of fighting a modern war with outdated strategies. The takeaway is crystal clear. Size and brute strength no longer dictate the outcome. In today's battles, it's intelligence, coordination, and adaptability that determine who prevails. And that wraps up this report from Red Zone Secrets, bringing you the most accurate, current insights, supported by top military analysts and political experts. If you found this video informative, be sure to like and subscribe. Your support motivates us to continue delivering high-quality, in-depth coverage. Share your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for the next video. See you soon.